joining us for another office hours session. My name is Matthew, and we have actually James presenting for us today. So we're going to let James take over in a little bit, and he's going to do a great job at presenting PDF Stamper. But just to get started, as always, we just want to make sure everyone understands what we're going to be going through. We have open forum in the beginning, as we always do. So if you have a question, please just use the reactions through Zoom and raise your hand and try to keep it to about 5 to 7 minutes. And then everyone's going to be able to see this on YouTube after, so this will be recorded. And like I said, today's spotlight topic is PDF Stamper. So I'm going to go ahead and allow anyone to ask any questions they may have. And if we have no questions, we're going to kick it off to James. Again, if you have questions regarding any add-on, it does not need to just be PDF Stamper. You absolutely can. And if you guys rather put it in the chat, you also can do that for sure. All right. Seems like everyone's eager to hear you talk, James.
Yep, it seems like it.
All right, kick it off to you then.
All right, so I guess I'll just start by sharing my screen. Let me know when you can see it.
We see it.
See it.
All right. So pretty much today, just to show off PDF Stamper, I put together this very simple app. All it has is an employees table. And I figured PDF Stamper is typically used with a lot of our, like government documents, because a lot of times those can't really be modified, except for just putting the actual information on there. So using some of our other document generation add-ons isn't really the best for that. And then just to show you the table that I have here, just pretty much just some simple information, name, address, and other information that you would potentially have on your employees. And just so you know, don't worry, this isn't my actual social security number.
That's good.
I made sure not to do that. But pretty much what our goal for today is to take this information and put it onto a government document. And in our case, it's going to be a W-4. But the first thing we need to do for running PDF Stamper is to actually set up PDF Stamper. So what you'll want to do is you'll go into our juiced cloud and you'll run the setup from there. So you'll see this PDF Stamper here. Obviously, if you don't have PDF Stamper yet, you'll see something similar to saying like start trial or something like that. But if you do already have it, it'll then ask you to either authorize a new application or set up a new table. For this, since I haven't set it up in this app yet, we're actually going to authorize a new application. And it's just going to ask some pretty straightforward questions. It's going to ask you if you have an existing user token, or you can enter a new user token if you have a separate one for this app. The token that I'm going to be using has already been set up for this, so I'll just select this one, then I'll hit next. It's going to ask for the application. There's only one app set up for this user token, so I'll just select this employees app. Authorize only, no setup required. We're not going to do that today because we're actually going to be setting it up. So we'll hit next. And then here it's just going to ask you to basically select the table that you want PDF Stamper to run from, which in our case, there's only one table, so it's just the employees. And then it's going to ask us to use either a standard PDF template or upload a custom template. So we haven't downloaded the template that we want from for that W-4 document. So we'll just use the standard template just for the setup. So now it's running. It's going to be adding in tables and fields, pretty much just all the stuff that we need for running PDF Stamper. Yep, and as you can see, once this shows up, you know, all right, the setup is finished. So now if I go back to the app and I hit refresh, you'll notice, okay, there's now the document templates and document subtables. You may know that if you already have Exact Forms Plus or even Excel docs, these tables might have already been created from those. And this actually uses the same tables. And since we also set this up in the employees table, we'll scroll down and we'll see, okay, this added 3 new fields here: the stamped date, the document, and then a button to run this. So now we're actually going to go to the templates and we're going to see what was added into here. So right now it's just a sample template. Just got basic information. It also added in some document subtables. We're going to be doing that later. These basically are here just for an example, but just because we're going to be doing it later, I'll delete these for now. But pretty much the next thing that we're going to want to do is actually get that W4 document that we're going to be generating. And since it's a government document, honestly, what you can just do is just type in government W4. We'll see it'll show up, and this should be the correct link for that. Yep. So this is just the W4 document that you can get straight from the IRS website, as you can see. So pretty much we're going to want to set this up to start using the pretty much prepare it before we actually upload it into this document template. So this does have some similarities to Exact Forms Plus, if you remember that, where on the document you'll put the tilde and then the field ID and then another tilde to close that off. You'll basically do the same thing except for these blue boxes here. These blue boxes are actually also known as form fields. So I'll probably call them both throughout this presentation, but so it's either the blue box or the form field. So right here, this one is just asking for the first name and middle initial. So if we go back to this employees table, we'll notice, okay, I don't have the middle initial field. That's fine. But I do have the first name. So what you're going to want to do is just right click on this and you'll see here that it says field ID 6. So we're going to want to use that to put the document or put the information in here. So once you're selected into this form field, you'll just want to do tilde 6 tilde. And then that's pretty much it. Now, if we were to upload this and do the rest of the setup, that's going to grab the information from this field. So it'll take James and it'll put it right into this form field here. We'll just do a couple more of these. We'll do last name. So we'll check, all right, this is field ID 7. So we'll put tilde 7. We'll also do the social security number. So that one is actually 15. So here we'll put tilde 15 tilde. Maybe we'll do some of these down here too, because they're numeric. So we'll do these 3 dependents, I guess. So this is field 17, field 18, and then field 19 for that total. So this one is for dependents under 17. So we'll put 17. This one is for over, so this one was 18. And then this one was that total field, so we'll just put 19 there. And then we'll just go back and double check, make sure those are correct. Yep, so that one was 17, that one was 18, the other one was 19. So now we have all of this information. We do still have some other stuff on here. For example, we have the signature and then the date for the signature. We'll do that at later on during this setup, but we want to just run it now, just make sure that we have this set up correctly. So if you're just editing this like straight through Google Chrome or whatever browser you're using, you're going to want to click on this download here and make sure you click with your changes. So that's actually going to keep those tilde 6, tilde 7, and all of that stuff. So I'll download that with the changes. I'll just name this FW4 template. So I'll save that. So now what we're going to want to do is come back to this document templates table, and we're going to upload that document that we just saved into here. So we'll hit edit, and then you'll click on the choose file here for this PDF template file field. I believe it's saved to my downloads. Yes, it did. So we'll upload that. We'll just hit save just so that it's in there. But the next thing that we're going to want to do is actually update this CList field. Pretty much when we were going through here and we were putting the tilde field ID tildes, we would basically just want to take all of these and make sure they're included into this CList. So we'll hit edit. You can leave these other ones in here, even if it's not being used. It's not too big of a deal, but it's probably best practice just to clear them out if you're not using them. So if I remember, we had 6. You'll separate it by a period, put a 7 for the next one. What else did we have? We had 15, 17, 18, and 19. So we'll include those. And I believe that was all the ones we did. Yeah, it was just those. So now all we'll do is once we have that there, we'll actually save this, but also I just realized when I did the setup, it just uploaded the sample template. So it's probably good to rename this just so when we come back later, we can know easily, okay, this is just the W4 template. So I'll just put W4 here. So now we pretty much are done with setting up this template. So now we're going to go back to the employees table, and we're going to make a couple of changes here. So I think just for clarity's sake, we'll just update this form. Just put in a section heading, call it PDF stamper. And then we'll just reorganize these fields a bit. Make it look a little bit nicer. So now we've got all these fields in a line and it's in its own PDF stamper section. So now what we're going to want to do is also update the parameters for this button formula. And this is the button that's actually going to be generating the document when you click on it. So most of this stuff is going to be, it's probably going to be unchanged. So I'll just explain some of these parameters. So for example, this TPID1, this is actually just what's telling us which template to use. So if we go back to the document templates table, that's actually going to be this one here. It's actually just the record ID number of this table or of this record in the table. So if you wanted to change it so that you wanted to use a different template, you could change this to 2, 3, or whatever that other template would be. So then this field here, this is the file attachment ID. This is basically just telling us which file we're going to store that document into. So for example, it should be the stamped document. So if I right click on this, we'll see, all right, that field ID is 36. So now I know when it runs, it's gonna fill into that field. So something else that I'm actually gonna change now is this FN parameter. This is just determining what the name of the document is, and stamped document isn't the most clear for this. So we'll actually just change this to W4. So it becomes so that once the document is generated, it's going to be called stamped W4. So then pretty much these other fields, this PDF DTE 35, that's just telling us where we're going to be storing the date of when the document was generated. And again, that should be this field because that was set up by the cloud. So if we right click on this, we see that it is 35.
Hey, James,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to jump in. Can you change the file name to include the last name at the end? So that we have stamped W4, maybe a hyphen, and then your last name with a name from the record?
Yeah, that should be good because then it gives more clarity on whose W4 it is. So you'll pretty much just set it up like that. So with the file name parameter, we are able to also include fields from throughout the record. So for example, here we're just using the last name, and pretty much all you'll want to do is just outside of the quotes, you'll put an ampersand, and then you'll just put the field that you want to include in there. You can also include some stuff afterwards by just doing another ampersand and then doing some quotes or even just another field. So there's a lot of customization when it actually comes to the file name for this. I'll clear that out because that's just going to be blank. But so yeah, now when the document's going to be generated, it's going to say stamped W4 dash, and then it'll have the last name field, which would be Malone. So then the next parameter, and this one I'm actually going to change, is this fill equals n. That's pretty much just telling the process that, okay, does this document include those form fields, those blue boxes that I mentioned earlier? And is there actually going to be data in them that we're going to want to swap out? So in this case, we're going to change this to yes, or just a y, and obviously n would be no. So this is actually going to allow us to process it. If we had it as no, those blue forms would have been the same, and it actually would have just kept the data as just the ~6 tilde. So, but if your form doesn't have any of those blue forms on there, those blue fields, you're going to want to leave this as no, because then our process is going to be looking at it and it's not going to find anything. This last one, which I'm also not going to update, is this a fill out equals n. This basically just tells us that once the document is generated, do you want to keep those form fields on there? In this case, we're going to say no, just because we're going to be generating it as like a completed document, pretty much. So now we've made most of those changes, so I'll hit save. So yeah, now as long as everything went well, we can actually generate this document now. Because everything worked well. We uploaded the document after updating it, we updated the C list, and now we've updated the button. So we'll click on this and we'll start generating it. So yep, now we can see here, this is the document that got generated. It has the W4. All of that structure that was originally there has stayed exactly the same. But as you can see now, instead of those blue forms with ~6 tilde, it now says my actual name, it gives my fake social security number, and it has all the other information that we put in there. We also included the numbers down here, as well as then the total for that. So pretty much all of those tildes now became the actual data from your document, or from your record. So I'll take a brief moment before we actually go into including stuff like the signature and then stamping a date there. Does anybody have any questions on what I just set up? Oh, I see Sean raised his hand.
Yeah, so around the C list, let's say I have to go back in and add some more things. Does the order of those of the C list, is that important, or can it be in any order? It's just making sure it's pulling the right fields.
So it actually can be in any order. So even if I put the 6 all the way at the end, that's perfectly fine. The order doesn't matter. It just matters as long as it is in the C list or not.
Okay.
So I guess just for an example, let's say I forgot to include 7 on the C list, we would have actually still seen ~7 tilde on this document as opposed to the actual data from Quickbase. So as long as it's in there, you're good.
Thank you.
So James, I've got a few things just that I think we wanted to touch on. So if you notice, a lot of these fields are exactly the same as Exact Forms Plus. I think we wanted to kind of go through what's here that's for Exact Forms Plus that might not be valid for PDF Stamper.
Yeah. So pretty much what we have here, you can see here, it does say EFP configurator, and as well as this subtable button here. Those are actually used for Exact Forms Plus. The reason why we have that here, even though we're not using Exact Forms Plus, is just because this is the same table that's used for your Exact Forms Plus document templates. So we have these buttons being created anyway, just so if you set up Exact Forms Plus in the future, it's already there for you, and then there's no issues with the setup.
Not if, James, when they set up Exact Forms Plus next.
True, when they set up Exact Forms Plus.
Right, and the only other thing too is that PDF template file. Isn't that actually a different field as well?
Mhm. I do believe, or actually, I think it is a different field. So that other field, I think it says Word document template or something like that. Um, that is a separate field, and I don't believe that was created just yet from the PDF stamper. But obviously, if you set up Exact Forms Plus,
Right.
it's going to generate that field. So you will have two different fields for the templates.
When, James, when?
Yes, when.
Yeah. And I think everyone also noticed the similarities between the PDF stamper parameters as well as the Exact Forms Plus parameters. The format is very, very similar. So it should be, a consistent look and feel, which is something we're very happy with. Sean, next question.
So going off of what you guys were just discussing, what's the difference between, what would be the use difference between PDF Stamper and Exact Forms Plus? And if I want PDF Stamper, do I have to have Exact Forms Plus?
So yeah, I guess the different use cases, it really just depends on what your document is and what you're working with to begin with. So just from like the actual standard, like what the actual differences are, PDF Stamper will use a PDF document as its template, while our Exact Forms Plus add-on will use a Word document as the template. And then the two don't work together, so you can't necessarily use a PDF template for Exact Forms Plus and vice versa. But kind of the different use cases, the main reason why I decided to go with the W4 for today's office hours was just because these you actually can't change yourself, as the government will basically, they'll be able to tell the slight differences and basically be like, this wasn't the actual document that we wanted you to use, and then it becomes null and void. So if, for example, if you tried to set up a W4 with Exact Forms Plus, you would need to create this as a Word document first before actually running it in Exact Forms Plus. And once you start recreating this, that's when it kind of becomes null and void. So this is definitely one of like the biggest use cases of PDF Stamper over Exact Forms Plus. Some other reasons why you would potentially want to use PDF Stamper is maybe just the template that you're using was always a PDF document that you guys were filling out, and then you'll be able to you won't have to recreate anything in Word and maybe lose some of the formatting or functionality or stuff like that. Because one of the really good things with PDF Stamper is that this template stays exactly the same. Nothing really gets shifted around. Sometimes with Exact Forms Plus, when we're putting data in there, maybe if it's a little too long, it'll add a new line or something like that. And then that'll shift your data. With PDF Stamper, that PDF template is going to stay the same every time.
Good answer, James.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that does sum it up. Okay. Any other questions before James goes on to some additional features? Sean, that was a good question. I appreciate you asking that, because many clients do come and ask us, what's the difference between your document generation add-ons? And since Exact Forms Plus can generate as a PDF, sometimes people do find that to be a little confusing, but I think James did an excellent job of explaining that. So Justin, make sure you clip that.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, and I guess too, just because we were talking mostly about Exact Forms Plus, the same goes for Excel Docs, our other document generation add-on. The main difference with that one is that we're using an Excel template for the base. And obviously, if you're trying to create a W4 through Excel, it's not going to be exactly the same. You're still going to run into some issues with that. But yeah, so that's pretty much the main reasons to use PDF Stamper over potentially our other document generation add-ons. So yeah, are there any other questions? All right. I mean, obviously you can always stop me at any point and ask your questions, but I'll just start showing you some of the other features, such as including the signature on these documents, which would also work for any kind of image, but in this case, we're going to want to use a signature for this. So if we go back to this employees table, you might have noticed while I was scrolling through here, we have the signatures. This is actually just using our QB signatures add-on, just as a little scribble pad, just to sign your own name. We're actually going to use this, and we're going to put it probably around here on this employee signature. So this will be pretty different from the way we did the other data, because for that we used these form fields, but as you notice, there is no form field for the signature and for the date. But also even for images, you can't really put an image into these form fields. So we do have another way of putting that information straight onto this document. So pretty much what we're going to want to do is we're going to go back to the document template that's running this. And we're actually going to now use this document subtables. I'm actually going to update this. By default, it's going to use the record picker report, but I'm actually going to change it to the list all, because that will actually allow us to see all of the fields that are being used for this. And also, now we're pretty much just going to add in a new subtable record. And this is actually going to be straight from this document subtables. Also, I do notice that this button isn't showing up. This is at least what you would normally click on to generate that document subtable, but looks like something went wrong with it. But at least what we could do is actually just go straight to the document subtables and add the record into here. So we'll just click on the new one. So this settings, this is actually used both in PDF Stamper and Exact Forms Plus, but we're not going to be using this for now. We're going to be using most of these other fields here. For the configuration name, this is just a way for us to better identify it. So we'll actually just put signature there, just so we know this is going to be used for the signatures. There's also a notes field just for some more in-depth note taking on what this one is actually doing. But we'll actually go straight to this type to be stamped. So there's a couple of options here. You have the text, you have the barcode, and you also have the image, which is what we're going to be using. So we'll select image, and then here you're going to select the page number. So for this, actually, as you can tell with this W4, we have page 1 all the way through 4. So here we're just going to tell them what page we're going to put it onto. And since this is just the first page, just page 1. So we'll put 1. And now here we have the X position and the Y position. So this is just telling us where it's actually going to be going. And this is just going to be the actual X and Y coordinates of around where we want this signature to go. Basically just how this one works is that it starts from the top left, and a positive X will send you to the right, and the positive Y will send you down, if that makes sense. So I actually did prepare this beforehand just about where those values are going to be. But something that you can do is if you have Adobe Acrobat, we do have a way to actually display the X and Y coordinates. So while you're doing that, you can just quickly go, okay, around here, and then it'll show you probably in the top left what the X and Y coordinate is. And you can actually put that into this document subtable. But I prepared that beforehand. So I'm just gonna paste these values in. So that's the X position is 150 and the Y position is 600. And just to go over this a little more, we use points or pixels to determine just how far over. So you will also want to account for that. I think by default, the Adobe Acrobat does it by inches, but I think Justin just put into the chat that helps or actually it was Keith, put the link to the help site. That basically explains how with Adobe you can do that, as well as how to change it over to the points so that it's in the same unit that we have here. But pretty much that's just saying 150 points to the right and then 600 points down. So we'll see that shortly once we generate it. Text to be stamped. This is basically just if you want a static value to be displayed at that location. But since we're doing an image, we're not doing that. But then here we have the image width and height. For those, I did also prepare those, but this is just the dimensions that the image will be displayed as when you do it. And since I prepared this beforehand, I made sure that this was a good size for that signature section. So it's not too tall, not too wide, and pretty much make sure that it fits in that section there.
James, quick question actually about the
Yep.
the signature width and height. That was just initially when you did it, that was like a that was just a trial and error process. Like you just plugged it in, see how it worked, and then kind of adjusted accordingly.
Yeah. You could also look if you have access to whatever the image is. If you know the dimensions, you can kind of base it off of that if you kind of want to keep it like that. But yeah, I did kind of just do a trial and error sort of.
Okay.
I think it might not be too easy, but if you are using the Adobe Acrobat thing that we mentioned, you could actually kind of just say, okay, I know that the starting point is right here. Now let me figure out what this point is over here and kind of base it off of that somewhat. But you could also just do trial and error and think like, it doesn't look big enough. Let me extend the width a little bit more and then just generate it again.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
You're welcome. So then we have the associated field ID, and pretty much this is just what field we're going to be using to display that data. And in this case, it's just this signature file. We'll do the same thing we did before with the tilde field IDs. We'll right click on it and we'll see field ID 30. So we'll put this in here through 0. Then we have the font type, size, color, and all of these other things. Because it's an image, you don't really have a font for that. It's just going to be whatever the image looks like. But when we do the date, when we stamp that on there, we will go over that. But since it's an image, we can leave this all blank. And then pretty much the rest of the stuff, we won't need to fill in. We do want to actually relate this to the document template. Normally this button here that wasn't showing up, normally once that's, when you click on that, it's actually going to automatically do that. So what I'll do, I think it's going to be, we'll just, at the very bottom here, we'll add the field that we need, which is just that related document template. And currently we only have one, but this is still good while you put in the name for that, because now I know, all right, this is going to be related to that W4 template. So now we'll hit save. And if we refresh in this document templates, you'll see, okay, here's all that information that I just put in, such as the image, the page one, the position, the width and height, and all that other stuff. But now actually what I'm going to do is we're just going to create the date one for this as well. So we'll generate another new subtable. Here we'll just do date signed. For the type to be stamped, we'll actually just go with text. We know it's still on the same page, so we'll go with page 1. The X and Y, this is also something that I prepared beforehand, but I'm pretty much aiming for this area here for this date. So what I have here is, so we'll put this into the X, so that's 460 all the way to the right. And then for the Y position, that's actually 617 down. That is a little bit more than the signature, but that's because it helped it stay close to that line a little bit better. Text to be stamped, like I mentioned before, if we wanted it to be a static value, you would just put that in there. But in this case, the date that this is generated is going to be different each time. So we're going to want this as a different value. The image width and height, we're not going to be dealing with that because it's not an image. But then we get down to the associated field ID. Basically the same thing that we did before, but instead of this signature file, we're actually just going to be using this today field. Pretty much just what I did with this, just so you can see it. It's actually just a formula field with a very simple just today within, and then the 2 parentheses. This just gives you the current date so that currently you can see, okay, this is January 11th, 2023. That's today's date. If we were doing this office hours tomorrow, this actually would have said January 12th without any kind of input. So we'll actually be using this so that it's always going to be the date that this is run at. And here you can see the field ID is 34. So now we'll just put into associated field ID 34. And now we have here the font and all this stuff. So since this is a text, we will need this information just so we know what to put it as. Just taking a quick look at this form, it almost looks like it's Times New Roman. So I'll put it at that. Font size, let's go with 12. And then we'll probably just go with black so that it matches the signature for the font color. And that's really all that we needed for that. But also we'll, like I mentioned before, if you use the button, it'll automatically populate this related document template, but we'll just manually select it here.
One thing to point out, guys, on this form, we don't have control in our setup wizard to show hide a lot of these fields. So one good practice is you can always put form rules in here to say, you know, if the type is text, to hide all the image related fields. If the type is image, to hide all the text related one, to just show the image one. So it's really a little cleanup that you can do after the fact so that it makes it a little bit more intuitive. But again, if our wizard could do it with the API, we would do that, but we don't have access to those form fields.
Yeah. So thank you, Keith. Yes, that at least set that up. So we'll refresh this document template again. And now we see here, we also have the date signed as well. And you can see here, we do have all that other information, such as the font and stuff, as opposed to the image height and width. So pretty much now, we are set up for this. So it's just going to take this template. It's still going to be replacing this ~6 tilde with the correct information. But now we're going to be having a signature here, as well as a date. So when we refresh this, actually something I forgot to mention before. So when we ran this earlier, it did update this date field with the time that we ran it, and then it also updated it with that document. So just clicking on that would allow you to check that document at any point in time. But now we're going to click on this again, just to generate a new one. So, yep, as you can see, we still have the same information as before with my name, the social security number, the deficiency or dependency numbers. But then as you can see, we now also have the signature, which was just that image field, as well as the date, which was today's date. And as you can see, just has that same James right there that I used with QB signatures, and then today's date right there. So does anybody have any questions on that? Because that's pretty much all that you need to do to include an image or to be able to stamp text or other kind of data without using those blue boxes, those form fields.
James, I got a question. What if I wanted those form fields to still be fillable after the document's created?
Yeah, so what you would do, you would go to the properties of the button. We'll open this up here. And you would actually be using this fill out equals n. When it's n, it basically will remove the blue boxes, but still keep the data right where it was. But if you change this to a y, it'll actually still keep those, and you can then go in and edit them. So I'll just save that. We'll actually just run it again so that we see how it looks with those blue fields on there. Okay, so this is a little weird. It might be something with the properties of that template that we downloaded. Because it seems like, it looks like it still has that tilde field ID tilde, but when you click on it, it actually does change to what the actual value was, which is a little weird. It might be something that the government just implemented when they uploaded this form. But at least normally, with most documents, from what I've seen, it will still keep the actual data, and it's not going to show what was normally there. But even then, when you have like the address, you could still type in that there, so that you still have the ability to update all of these form fields with the information, even after it's generated. So
That's interesting though, because I never knew that myself. I'm glad I asked that question, because I think you can't use a combination then. So it's either going to be all fillable fields are going to be fillable. So that, like you said before earlier, if you had it as a no,
yeah,
that we couldn't replace the tildes.
yeah. So like if you see here, I'm typing away and it's not letting me change anything.
Right.
So this is just,
It almost
as
locked.
is.
Yeah, it almost locked it after.
Yeah. But here I could then go in and go Joe or whatever. And then that would then be updated, because then you could just save with the changes and it'll still have that value.
So it's almost like if you wanted to have a fillable output, then you really can't use fillable to populate some fillable fields. Or am I wrong?
Well, so are you basically, so
like it looks like the output, we want it to be fillable. But earlier you said if you can't have well, I guess I haven't used this, obviously I haven't looked at this add-on in a while, so it didn't want you, it left tilde 6 and tilde 7 in there, and the other ones as well, because we still have it as an output fillable. So it's almost like you can't use it if you want the output to be fillable. It's not letting you.
Yeah, I almost wonder if this is just because there's probably something with the properties of this.
I think each fillable fields property can be set up differently,
Okay.
and that could be the case.
That's interesting. That's good.
Yeah.
So on the PDF itself, you have properties on those fillable fields, so you can modify those,
Right.
and we keep those properties. Because obviously, we don't change the document, so
Yeah.
that's interesting. We'll have to look at that further and see how we can change that in the document itself, in the template.
Which, yeah, just because this is a W-4 and it is a government document,
right, you don't
we
want
actually don't have any way to modify this stuff. So like normally what you could do is, if you wanted to add new of these form fields or remove them or whatever, or change the properties, you could open it up in Adobe Acrobat and make your changes there. But due to the protections of this W-4, we actually don't have a way to modify this, because they have it pretty much just locked down so that you can't edit this stuff. You could really only just fill in these form fields and then save that. But at least I have seen with pretty much every other PDF stamper setup that I've done, that it will still have this actual data showing up when you keep these form fields on there. So it normally doesn't put those tilde 7 tilde and then kind of hides it like that. So I'm thinking it might just be a property of this document template.
Can you still stamp with XY coordinates in fillable forms? Let's say I wanted you to get rid of the tilde 7 in the last name, and instead of using tilde 7 and use the fillable field, I wanted you to just stamp that with the XY coordinate instead. Could you stamp it in there?
So with the stamped data with like the X and Y coordinates, so for example, we do have that here with the
Right.
date. That's actually not editable. That's just straight onto the PDF. So
Yeah, but if I wanted to stamp the last name Malone
Mhm.
into last name, but I didn't want to use tilde 7 in the fillable form field. I just wanted to use XY coordinates and pop it in there.
Okay, yeah.
Is
For
that
that-
possible?
Yes.
Okay.
Pretty much you would just do the same thing that we did before.
Right.
You would add this document subtable record.
Hmm.
You would fill in the information, put the X and Y coordinates, and then you'll put in the field ID, font, and all of that stuff. That will put that data pretty much right where you want it. Obviously, once you have the X and Y coordinate,
Okay.
but then it wouldn't be using the blue box.
Right.
So
Okay.
good question.
Well, I'm glad I came.
Yeah. Are there any other questions with how I set this up or any other thing?
James did a great job.
Thank you.
As James just mentioned, any questions regarding PDF Stamper or any of our add-ons in general? All right, looks like you answered pretty much everyone's questions. So that was a basic PDF Stamper setup. If you guys have any questions on that and you don't want to ask them here, you could always email support and we would get back to you. But I think based off of everything you've gone through, James, unless you have something else to show everyone, I think we could wrap it up for today.
That was pretty much it. So yeah, if nobody else has any questions, we could probably just wrap it up then.
All right. All right, James. Well, I appreciate you doing this, and I hope everyone got some value out of this, and we hope to see you next week. All right. Thanks, everyone.